Hi, I'm Daniel Keys, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Encrypting Billions, no other than Mr. Patrick R. Alexander.
Well, Patrick was the guy who helped me write it. It's a story about me, Michael Keresman.
Okay, sorry for that. So, Mr. Michael, can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I'm excited to be here. Encrypting Billions is a feel good story about how to build companies, how to get involved in entrepreneurial situations. It's a story of um, my email address is 3x3, 3x3ventures.com. And that's the 3x3. First, my wife and I had part of three successful ventures, and we have three daughters. And the older I get, the more I realize the second three is more important than the first. So early on in my career, I was fortunate enough to be part of the management team that put together the first statewide HMO network in the country. Later on, I was a co-founder of a company named Steris out of Cleveland, Ohio. We made the world's first rapid low sterilization system. So if you think of minimally invasive procedures, all the instruments are delicate, sensitive, um, fragile, and you need a gentle process to sterilize. We commercialized that effort and went from zero to over $1 billion in about 10 years. It's publicly traded still and several million dollars larger. And then when I was younger, I had this recurring dream in high school, and that recurring dream had a name cardinal to it. And this dream was about me being part of an organization, starting from scratch, a company in my hometown. And that dream recurred. So eventually, after leaving Steris, I teamed up with a couple guys and we started a company. And they said, Mike, what should the name be? I said, well, it should be something with Cardinal in it. So hence the name Cardinal Commerce. In Cardinal Commerce, we create the largest digital authentication network in the world for remote transactions. Ultimately, Visa, the credit card company, bought us, and certainly all of us stockholders were quite happy with that. But there's a story about how you're facing a very large industry, trying to figure out how to nudge your way in and become relevant. And at the time, this was when fraud was pretty rampant. And we created back then we called it ASP. Today it might be in the cloud, but a system that distilled all the complexity out of the connections between consumers, merchants, and issuing banks, so that we could more easily validate those transactions, so commerce would work better. So that is the Cliff Notes version of me and the book. There's a lot of cute stories in there about other kind of entrepreneurs, and it is not a technical book. It's a feel good book.
Mr. Michael, what does the title Encrypting Billions represent in the context of the story or message?
So with Cardinal Commerce, you think about internet, mobile, any connected device, and the challenge you have is that you have a consumer that's using all kind of different devices, going to a merchant, and there's billions of consumers, millions of merchants, and tens of thousands of issuing banks. And how you can get, and each of those parties knows something about who they're dealing with, but they can't share that information. So how can you share that information in a encrypted and safe way? And that's what Cardinal did. So we could connect to a merchant and the largest of merchants. While you're there, you're putting your address, your phone number, your email address, etc. And that information the bank has, but there's really no way for them to compare in real time without using Cardinal. And that's what we did.
Was
And
there
Cardinal
specific?
still does.
Yes, indeed. So, was there a specific event or trend in technology or finance that sparked the idea for this book?
So early on, in the early days of the internet, it was clear to me that the internet would be a fantastic communication channel and a distribution channel, but it was wide open, and there wasn't really any structure to it, and it was a lot of fraud. A lot of fraud happened on there, and our belief was that buying online ought to be more simple, faster, and easier than going to a face-to-face store. Face-to-face commerce, you have what they call card present transactions. You have the card physically there, the merchant takes it, swipes it, and you know that's harder to commit fraud that way than online, where you don't even know if the card is actually there or who is really buying. So the merchant might not sell to a consumer because they don't know, and the bank might not authorize that transaction because they don't know who really initiated the transaction. And that is, in the simplest way, what we were able to do is authenticate consumers, merchants, and banks to each other in a seamless way.
Mr. Michael, how do encryption and digital security play a central role in the storyline or lessons of the book?
Well, there's a lot of good stories in the book, and um, it I'll give you one story about entrepreneurs and getting started. So early on, I used to work in a construction site. I was worked for Babcock and Wilcox Construction Company, and there was a guy that would come in almost dressed in a space suit, and I was to make sure I paid him, wrote him a check each and every week. I didn't know what he really did. So finally, one day I invited him in. What he did was they call it affectionately the honey dippers. And what they did was, the construction site had outhouses, and this guy with this, all this gear on would clean, suck out the bad water and put in the blue water in. So one time I finally, invited him in for a cup of coffee and asked him his story. And think about that job, and whether you might want to do that or not. So when I talked to him, he said, "Well, I dropped out of high school. I married my high school sweetheart. We're both high school dropouts. She does the bookkeeping. She's not very good at bookkeeping. That's why I have to get the check before I leave. And she gets mad at me if I don't get the check." And he said, "I make about $300,000 a year," which at the time, and this is 30 years ago, was a whole lot of money. Still a lot of money today. And his dream was to take that. He worked at that job, saved money, bought his own truck, and he and his wife dream was to own a farm in Florida. I don't know if he ever got that, but I knew he was making enough money and was disciplined enough to do that. So the point there is, you think about, I want to be an entrepreneur, and there are extraordinary amount of opportunities out there. And I think I gave an example of one that probably nobody ever heard of, but it worked for him. So there's stories like that in the book, that if you have a strong enough desire, the Constitution, above all, work and work and work and work, over time you can achieve your dream, because your dream is yours. And because it's your dream, it's perfect. But you have to have the fortitude and the discipline to make it happen. So that's one example of a story there. And there's several others in there mixed in between, the basic, the three venture opportunities, or startup opportunities that I participated in.
What are the biggest risks you see today in terms of data security and protecting wealth?
Um, well, I'm going to kind of go a little bit real simple and some basic things. because there's one person responsible for data security. That's you and me for us individually. And there's some things that you can do that are very um, complex. One is have a second email address that you do all of your shopping on. Keep your email that you talk to your friends and banks and that, keep that separate. And don't share that with very many people at all. Do all your searching and your surfing and your buying on what I would call your shopping email. That's where most of the fraud comes into play. Know that. The other one has a far more limited number of people that would use your email address. So you're more easily able to spot fraudsters. So the biggest thing you can do is do yourself. Also, when you shop, if you don't know what quite you're looking for, go to incognito and shop there. That way, you're not leaving any paw prints where somebody could get that. So, the number one job of security is with oneself. And
So how,
go
yes, go
ahead.
ahead. How did you research technical aspects of encryption and cybersecurity for the book?
Please ask me that again.
How did you research the technical aspects of encryption and cybersecurity of the book?
So, Cardinal actually holds about 80 patents and maybe has 100 plus more pending. The the reason why I balked at answering your question is when we started there, we were the research. There was nothing out there. It wasn't. So, if I were to join a company today, I might do some research, but oftentimes you're faced with, you know, so I'll give you an example. We had our authentication system, and I said, well, how are we going to get this in place? And someone says, well, we're going to send a piece of software to the merchant to all install that software on their web servers. And I shook my head and I said, no, uh, no large merchant is going to take a piece of software from some fledgling company out of Cleveland, Ohio, and stick it into their main servers. So how do we get them to use our service? So instead of us putting our technology behind their firewall, we said just put this little link on your website and let the transaction come to us, the information. We will decipher it, um, encode it, encrypt it, and send it. We used to say we could take a transaction from any place to the right place in the right way. So the barrier we came on, and this is, we actually have a method patent in Europe, EU on this, is rather than putting the intelligence behind the merchant's firewall, we had the merchant send us its information to our servers in the sky. So your question of what research do you do, oftentimes when you're figuring out a problem, there is no solution out there. And that's when you figure out a solution. That's when you have something special.
Mr. Michael, what advice would you give readers about protecting their digital wealth today?
Well, I gave you the one. Have a secondary email address for all your shopping. You'd be surprised that gets and I have one, and it gets thousands and thousands of emails because every merchant wants you to give you um, deals and sell. Keep that separate. Keep your financial and private life separate from your active. And if you need to have three email addresses, but keep your private personal life separate from your commercial life. I can't stress that how important that is and how much relieved you'll be because you're not going to get hammered with all kind of spam ads, etc. Similarly, uh, and this is a very basic, how many apps do you have on your phone? Not you personally, but anybody. Every app that you have is a potential of a security breach. Limit your apps, get rid of them. There's some running in the background. Keep it down to a manageable number. Everybody wants you to do something on an app. Be reluctant to accept those apps. The, overexposed in social media, that's where people go to get information. So recognize that once you're out there, anybody has access to it. Whether they steal it by going behind a firewall, we've all heard all kind of different break-ins and things like that, or they fish it out of you or scam it out of you. Um, my daughter thought she was going to go to jail and she sent $5,000. And we've all seen those things. And I think nobody's going to answer an email from some tortured prince in some foreign country that has 20 millions of dollars to help him unlock or her unlock. So um, you yourself have to be the diligent one. Um,
I-
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Michael, in your opinion, what is the biggest threat for financial security in the digital age?
Um, well, so when I talk to banks, and they have security people, and every bank has security people, and you have the marketing people, and everything the marketing people want to do is make it faster, easier, and simpler for the consumer to use the bank or shop at the merchant. And they fly right in the face of security. We can make the technology is there to make every transaction 99.999% safe and secure. But that's an awful lot of friction to go through, time consuming things. And we all get annoyed when you have to answer a lot of questions, enter data, all that kind of stuff. Uh, you know, get your phone to, they give you, code on your phone, you have to send it, log it in. All those kind of things are what typically is called friction, and consumers don't like it. So the biggest challenge is fast, easy, and simple, and security. The technology is there to make things more secure, but we as consumers kind of want everything fast, simple, and easy. That fast, simple, and easy is what probably creates the most opportunity for the bad guys to win.
Mr. Michael, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to one of my audiobooks, people. Audiobooks and my Book 101 Review, Volume 3 Suggestions, Book 101 Review, Volume 2 Selected, and Book 101 Review, Volume 1 Highly Recommended. These are the product of my first season on Book 101 Review. They are available from where books are sold, and one of my self-help books, Threads of Existence, Waving the Tapestry of Life, Stand Tall, Stand Together, Breaking the Chains of Bullying, and Life is Too Short, a journey of discovery of fulfillment and joy, and one of my climate change book, Earth Fever, The Unraveling Climate, and Our Race to Restore Balance, available on Audible itself and one of the bestsellers. So, Mr. Michael, to sum up our discussion for today, would you like or are you planning to write a sequel or related work that continues the idea introduced in Encrypting Billions?
Yes, working on it right now, and don't have a title yet. Where Encrypting Billions was a collection of stories, if you will. This one's going to be a little bit more of how to do things, how to be an entrepreneur, how, and, you know, if you think about it, we spend about half of our awake adult life working, sleep 8 hours, assume, and, so going to work, getting to work, commuting, about half of our adult life we are working. So Why not make it worthwhile? Why not make it fun? Why not make it enriching? I didn't say rich, enriching. And I think that helps make us better people.
Indeed, Mr. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world.
Thank you, Daniel. My pleasure.
So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book,
Yeah,
Encrypting Billions?
yeah, Crypting Billions. It's a good story. You'll like it.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Michael because if you support him, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Michael, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
More to come, people. See you soon.